Hello and welcome to Nerdverse Unshuffled, a geeky podcast where we introduce you to the language of board games. We are your hosts, Jacques van Heerden and Fjord Hendricks.
So in this episode, we're talking about BoardGameGeek. Now, we've mentioned this site a number of times, but it is probably one of the first things you have to learn if you're going to get into board games seriously. Just being able to find out, what game are these people talking about? Wait, who is that again? What is that thing? Can you show me what the box looks like just once? Then this is the site for you.
Yeah, we probably should have started with this episode then if it's that important.
Well, you can get away with not reading everything. It's like the way I see this is, it's like you don't start getting into something by reading, the Encyclopedia Britannica from volume A to volume Z, right? Sometimes it helps if somebody can just break it down a little bit and show you or give you a little bit of an idea of like, this is where to start. So that's kind of the idea with the whole podcast. Like, we've tailor-made this so that it is very easy to get into, and hopefully no one should struggle to get on board from episode 1. But if you've ever gotten to the point where you think, I really would love to look this stuff up, well, this is the episode for you. So, as we do with every episode, let's start with the definition from the Board Game Jargon Primer. Take it away, Fjord.
So, BoardGameGeek, also called BGG, BoardGameGeek.com, is the most comprehensive, well-known website for board game information, where board gamers get the information about games, they share opinions, photos, digital rulebooks, even work together to create games, make derivations of games, put their own resource together. It's a crazy big site. And if you're into board gaming in any way bigger than owning like 30 themed copies of Monopoly, you will know about BoardGameGeek, mostly because it's also a fantastic way to keep track of your growing collection.
Yes. And if you've ever heard somebody mention a game and you kind of are like, well, that sounds interesting, I want to check that out a little bit, this is a place you can go. Would you say it's accurate to call it the equivalent of Wikipedia for board games?
That's an interesting one. I'd say possibly yes and no, because it does more than Wikipedia does for single entry. And you'll often find that Wikipedia's own entries on some of the games are somewhat lacking when it comes to compared against BGG, which has, not just the news, and it's got images, it's got a lot of photographs of individual board games. There are, it tells you a lot more about the game than Wikipedia ever would. So, for example, it's going to tell you, how many players it can accommodate, what the rating is, how long is it going to take to play if you know the game well, how complicated the game is, who designed it, who the artists are, who the publishers are, what sort of categories of genres of mechanics are you going to be working with here when you look at this game. There's a lot of information, and that's not even, or digging into the forums.
Yes. Okay. So it's. I suppose what I was getting at is like in terms of like finding information about board games.
Yeah. No. Absolutely.
It is the go-to site to go find some information.
It is.
It's nice to be able to go to a game and say, "Hey, okay, well, I like what this designer does. Let's go click and see what else this person has designed."
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely.
Or I really love the art in this. To kind of
that happens a lot.
Go check it out. But it is also a bit like Reddit.
You could also say, "Oh, I don't like that artist. Let me go find out what else is done, so I don't, pick up on the other guys."
Harsh, but fair.
I know that there are some people, for example, who do not like the Miko's artwork as it appears in games such as Architects of the West Kingdom or Rages of the North Sea and so on. Some people just don't like the Miko's art style. I love it, but it's not for everyone. And if you want to just go, oh well, what can I do to avoid seeing their artwork? Well, that's BoardGameGeek website is a way to go.
Well, if I suppose if something's going to put you off, it's also a good way to find out, hey, is this game that I'm thinking of getting going to include this thing?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it's a bit like Wikipedia. It's a bit like Reddit. Like there are a lot of people with lots of opinions. Like the forums are very interesting and very intriguing.
I mean, the site has been around since 2000, and it's still going very, very, very strong today. It is literally almost like the one-stop shop for board gaming.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Cool. So I think let's take a quick look at what's on the actual site.
Okay. Let's start with a tour of the homepage. So on the homepage, what you're going to see mostly is either an explore or your own dashboard. And if you're in the explore tab, you're going to see mostly like news. You're going to see what they call the hotness. So it's the games that are trending, being talked about a lot. And then there's stuff like crowdfunding. There's videos. There's discussions. And then just that they dig into more lists and so on that people have put together. If that is what you want to explore. And if you go to your own personal dashboard, there's a lot more detailed information that's very specific to what you'd want to see, including news items that are specific to what you want to look at, videos and so on that you'd want to take a look at. And there's bars on the side that give you like a rundown of what you've looked at recently. And then you can customize pretty much everything on there. And then there's a whole bunch of other menus along the top to show you, you can browse it, you can get to the forums, you can look at the lists. It's got a shopping section, you can look at the community, and of course there is your search on the top as well.
Yeah. So basically I think that's how a lot of people are going to be using the site, at least to start off with, is to just go
search.
Yeah, so just using the search bar, being like, oh, someone mentioned this game. Let me go see what it is.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then what's nice about the site as well is that it'll tell you if there are different versions of the same game, or if the different games have the same name. One of my favorite things about the search results is the pages for the games themselves is all the user generated photos. So the game, what it looks like on the table, what some of the components look like actual people playing it. And one of the first things, in fact, that I saw that kind of got me sucked into the site in a major way was just the fan made, handcrafted special containers and boxes and things for Arkham Horror. And they are amazing things that people have done. Just like all out, like just beautifully done.
Now, people do go quite some depths to get, to bling up the games. They do a lot. I do have to say that one of the interesting things is that the search functionality is a little unintuitive, because if you click the search button, the search box, a little drop down comes up that says board games, right? And there's advanced search. But then you don't necessarily know that you can click the board games drop down and search via artists. You can search for designers. You can search for fantasy games. You can search for the forums. And so you can get through a lot without, even touching the advanced search.
Yes.
And you can even look for podcast episodes, and you'll find us as well if you
will
happen to. or podcast episodes.
You will. I was very proud of the day we added it to the BGG podcast list. I was also surprised by how many board game podcasts there are, but nothing quite like this
There
one.
are a lot.
Nothing
There
quite
are
like
a
this
lot.
one.
No,
I'm happy to say.
we are fairly unique in that regard.
Yes.
But that's it. That's a search of the podcasts. It's not necessarily going to give you a list of the podcasts. For that, you need to go elsewhere.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's on the homepage, if you just sort of, as a normal person going there for the first time and you don't have a profile, obviously you'll have a dashboard if you've got a BoardGameGeek user profile. It's free. It's great. It's really worth doing. But basically, if you just go to the normal homepage, you'll see there's a whole podcast section with a link to the latest episode of the official BoardGameGeek podcast.
Yeah.
There's what they call the hotness, which is a list of the top currently trending games. There's a crowdfunding section, which if you love your wallet and enjoy budgeting, you want to avoid, because that gives you a link to a whole bunch of board games that are currently on Kickstarter and other crowdfunding platforms. There's a featured video section. There's a news section with articles to board
That's
games.
a lot. It's a
events,
big site. It's a very big site.
new releases, other stories from BGG and other sites. There's a link to the trending conversations on BoardGameGeek. There's a contest section, which I think is mostly US only, or I don't know if shipping's included.
I've actually entered a lot of those contests.
Oh, really? Huh.
And I've won absolutely zero.
Aww.
Although one of the other guys who plays with us quite often, he has won stuff from the contest section, so that's all right. So we can attest that the contest section does work. You do win things, but you're up against thousands of others.
Yeah. So then there are also links to reviews. There's a user-generated list of board games around any subject you can imagine.
Oh my word! Geek lists, I think, possibly deserve their own episode at some point in the future, just because there are so many weird ones.
Yes, there are some very peculiar ones.
There are lists of games, for example. If you look at geek lists, it's just a geek list is a way of compiling a list of games around whatever particular theme or subject you decide you want to do. And so there's one, for example, of geek list of games that are designed by people in Africa. Fantastic. There's a geek list of games featuring XYZ as its main mechanic, or there are some weird ones. There's one that I subscribe to that's the list of games that by popularity, so have they moved up or down, and so which are the fastest movers in popularity.
Yeah. So just this week, there's one about bingo caller games. I mean, there isn't a specific mechanism, I think, tied to this type of game, but it's a useful way of like saying, okay, well, I like bingo. I like this aspect of bingo. Like, which other games do this thing? And there are all kinds of games listed on there. I would never have thought to even look at that.
Yeah, no, it's such a bizarre corner of the website, but it's there, and it's really cool the way people discuss these themes, right?
It's a great way of finding similar games to games that you've enjoyed, and maybe get an idea of, okay, well, how could you do this differently? I mean, they won't all be the same game. Just as a word of warning. Like, just because you like one game on that list, don't buy all of them. But yes, I was actually chatting to another friend of ours who plays in our group, and he reminded me that he did, in fact, when he started playing board games, go to the list of the hotness, like the top rated board games on BGG, and just bought a whole bunch of them. and he doesn't have most of those games anymore.
So that you can get by going to Browse or Board Games.
Yeah.
And you will see the list of the top X amount of board games, however many you decide. I think by default it shows you the top 100 board games. Yeah, it's the top 100. Yeah. And it's not the best way to start your collection, because I think the one thing that nobody tells you about BoardGameGeek, you kind of intuit this on your own eventually over time, is that the majority of the people who are playing board games on BoardGameGeek and writing about it and rating things, these are people who are deep in the hobby. They are really, really, really hardcore fans of board games.
Yes.
And so it's also people who have been playing for a long time, and therefore the games tend to skew towards the heavier side, towards the more difficult end of things.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you look at the top game, Brass Birmingham, right? If you come to us, if you looked at this list last year, Brass Birmingham was not the top game. It was Gloomhaven, and Gloomhaven had been sitting on the top of the list for 5 years. But if you take a look at the difficulty of Brass Birmingham, that sits at a weight, and you can refer to our weight episode from last month. And it's at 3.88. That is a ridiculously heavy game sitting at the top of BoardGameGeek.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not, and not denying that it is an absolutely fantastic game, because it is an absolutely fantastic game.
Yes.
But it's also
not for everybody.
Get into to start your collection with. No, it is not the starting point for you. But
no.
Twilight Imperium sits at 5th place, and that is also no way to start your collection.
I've never even played it.
Yeah,
and I will probably avoid playing it for as long as I live.
In fact, of all the games in the top, I wouldn't start with anything in the top 10, actually. If I go to the top 20, maybe, then I can start seeing, these are games that you can start a collection with. So look at number 16, that's Castles of Burgundy. Yes, you absolutely should put a copy of Burgundy in your collection. It is so good.
Fun game.
Seven Wonders Duel, yes. Wingspan. Wingspan is the it has started so many collections just by being such an accessible game.
And it's got a whole tutorial game that you play, and it teaches you literally how to play the game.
Yeah,
and you can play it with people that haven't played the game before, and then they know how to play the game as well as you do. Which is great.
And then you get to like number 39, Food Chain Magnet. That is the epitome of punishing. If you make a bad decision at the start of the game, you will never recover. You do not want to be introducing your friends fresh off Monopoly to Food Chain Magnet. It is not, a game that you can trust your decisions in its hands unless you know what you're doing.
No, in fact, even if you've played like a modern classic like Ticket to Ride or Catan or whatever, and you go from that to Food Chain Magnet, you'll also go like, what the hell is this? What is this? Why are you making me play this game? Why do you hate me?
So the point what I'm making, the long story short, right, is that by and large, a lot of these games that skew towards the heavier side of things are an acquired taste. And you should absolutely not be using the top 100 list as a shopper's guide.
No.
Like I did at one point.
So it gives you useful consumer information, but it is not a shopping list.
No, it isn't. Absolutely. You cannot treat it as a shopping list.
Yeah. But if you've ever wanted to explore anything or find out like, hey, so I like board games, maybe there's other stuff I will like that's similar to this, or what has this person done? Or you'll be able to find other things that are like it.
Absolutely.
And that's the end of this episode. But wait, you may say, Jacques, you have not described anything about how this helps us. Well, that's because this is another one of those episodes. It's just a little bit too long for one episode, and just a little bit. we just wanted to cover too much in the one thing, so we've decided to split it up into two. This will be the season finale two-parter. Come back next episode for the explanation of how exactly this can help you and a little bit more about how the site actually works. We'll also be delving deeper into the functionality of the site using one of Fiat's favorite board games, Brass Birmingham. We're going to be looking a little bit at how the site allows you to find more information about the game, figure out what it is, how it works, how to play it, discover some of the tips and tricks you can use to find ways to make your gaming experience even better. And then we will, as promised, get to the section where we explain exactly how the site can help you learn more about board games and make board gaming more enjoyable for yourself and your friends. So, looking forward to seeing you. Please join us again for the next episode, and we will have more information about the actual proper season finale, which might actually happen at the beginning of season 2. But we'll have to let you know. We haven't quite decided that yet.
Thank you for listening. You can follow us on various platforms and join the conversation on Discord. Links in the episode description wherever you found this podcast. You can find articles and discussions about the terms used in this podcast over at nerdverse.co.za. You can also find articles on a host of other subjects, including tabletop role-playing games, interviews, events, and how-tos. Your hosts were Jacques van Heerden and Fiat Hendricks. Music editing and producer, Fiat Hendricks. Executive producer, Jacques van Heerden. Unshuffled is a Nerdverse Productions podcast.